Thank you, Josef, and you touched upon many of the keywords that we will be addressing today. It's difficult to actually handpick a few if I'm to react on a few, but the high-level political awareness and use of space for diplomacy, these are indeed the themes that in the space power discourse we have to accentuate, and I'm happy that the conference will provide an avenue and platform to further engage in that discussion. Our next contribution will be a contribution from the European Commission by Timo Pesonen, Director General of DG DEFIS. He unfortunately couldn't be with us today, but he was kind enough to provide a video message which I invite you to follow. I think it conveys a good energy and the content. I leave that to you. Please, our team, put
Dear
the video
Ludwig,
message on.
dear Josef, ladies and gentlemen, let me extend my sincere gratitude to ESPI for inviting the European Commission to participate in your traditional autumn conference. I'm sorry I cannot be physically with you today, but I have very warm memories from September 23 when I was in Vienna with you. This year's ESPI Autumn Conference takes place at a pivotal moment as we are actively shaping the Europe's future space ambitions. In the Commission, with the preparation for the next multi-annual financial framework, and in ESA, with the ministerial meeting in Bremen in the coming month. The growing geopolitical tensions are challenging our continent in unprecedented ways. War is at our doors. Drones are flying close to our airports. Global supply chains are disruptive. In this critical juncture, one truth has become undeniable. Europe must act. Investing in our resilience and autonomy is more crucial than ever. Europe's leadership in space is a strategic necessity because space assets are critical for the achievement of the EU priorities, in particular for security and defense. The dual-use space-based services of flagship Galileo, EGNOS, Copernicus, IRIS-2 reinforce our resilience and preparedness. Looking ahead, our proposal for the European Competitiveness Fund includes a specific policy window for space and defense. This will sustain and further reinforce the development of our flagships, vital to ensure our autonomy in space for satellite navigation, Earth observation and secure communication. At the same time, we propose new initiatives for increased autonomy, such as Earth observation governmental service, enhancing situational awareness for security and defense users, as well as new components for access to space and technological sovereignty. The proposed budget is 5 times higher than the present budget, and it will support a robust and competitive European space and defense industry. Just last week, we adopted the Defense Readiness Roadmap to enhance the defense capabilities of member states and achieve defense readiness by 2030. The communication proposes a defense flagships for a European defense space shield that relies on an EU component leveraging our EU system governmental services, as well as on capabilities developed by member states, focusing on space domain awareness and on military operations and services where Europe has clear shortfalls. Just a few days ago, this was also confirmed in the Commission work programme for next year, when we will propose an action plan for a European space shield focusing on space for defence and defence of space. Finally, a key element to foster Europe's ambition in space is the EU Space Act. For the first time, we are establishing a single European framework on safety, resilience and environmental sustainability of space activities. With clear, predictable rules, we can give space industry the confidence to invest and grow in Europe to ensure that our space economy remains competitive, secure and sustainable. Above all, the EU Space Act is a collective European project. Its success depends on continued cooperation between the Commission, Member States and industry. Let me conclude. The Commission's ambition in space are high, but success requires joint effort. Together with the Member States, European Space Agency, ESPI, and the whole space industrial ecosystem, we must fully exploit all available programs and financial instruments. And we must do this in a coordinated way, together, to ensure complementarity, to avoid duplication, and to build real European strategic autonomy through space. And I'm sure we can do this if we do it together. Thank you very much.
We are, as ESPI, we are a policy institute, and when we create and organize the Autumn Conference, we want it to be a policy forum. And for that discussion and what comes next in the program of the conference will be a policy dialogue. We're excited to have members of 6 national parliaments with us, Many of them also engage in the framework of the European Interparliamentary Space Conference, who is increasing membership and activities. And this will be also the representatives who will join us on the stage. So what comes next is a dialogue between active politicians, members of parliaments, who I am excited to welcome two of them to the stage, George Freeman from United Kingdom, Mario Kadastik from Estonia, and our session will be moderated by Etienne Schneider, chair of our advisory council. Etienne, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Thomas. You know, you told me that we're going to have 25 minutes, and if I'm looking at the agenda, our time is already over. And what's more, you asked me to moderate this with two politicians. You know, they never stick with the timing, you know. And it doesn't matter whatever question I'm going to ask them, because they will tell me whatever they want to tell me. So I know how it works, having been in politics for quite some time. But anyhow, I was listening to Joseph, and Joseph, you did a great speech, and I fully agree with everything you said, because Europe did a long way when I'm looking back like 10 years from now, 10 years where we have been and where we are today. So that's also due to you and your team's work, so thank you for that. But of course it is due to the entire community, space community, which developed largely over the last 10 years. I remember when in Luxembourg I started the Space Resource Program in 2016, everyone was laughing at me, because normally space was seen as a public affair. So there was no space or no room for private investors, except if you look at the satellite business, but all the rest was more or less public affairs. Nowadays, if we look at space, it is really becoming a private affair, and there's a lot of private money invested into Europe, even into European space industry, even though it could be much more. But coming back to what you said, Joseph, all the positive points, I want to discuss with two politicians, two active politicians, about what is missing, what is still missing in order to become a space power. And you said politicians have always a lot of different priorities, and there are a lot of different priorities. So what is missing from your point of view, and what should we do, what should politicians do, how can we motivate them to get even more active in the space domain? Maybe George, do you want to start?
Great, thanks Etienne, and thank you Joseph and Ludwig and ESPI for this brilliant event. So I should say I'm not really a politician. I mean, I'm a member of parliament. I'm working cross-party. I'm deputy chair of the Science Select Committee, former Minister for Space, and a conservative supporter of Europe. There are a few of us left. And so I think we meet at a really key time. Those of us who believe in the space industry, I think the defense security threat is our big opportunity. And we were moving, I think, from a world where China and the US led with defense sovereign capability to dominate commercially. Now we're back on defense. But if we're smart in Europe, we could build a space capability which morphs into and leads us into what really the world is moving towards, which is space as a commercial domain. I think of it like shipping. We will have, in 100 years, space will be like shipping, and people will want regulation, they'll want rules, they don't want dirty ships from unlicensed territories that are pirates. It's all the same stuff. So I think we have an opportunity here in Europe, I say with a small e, ESA, EU plus. But I don't think we're a space power yet. To be a power, you have to have serious funding. We've got the economic strength, but we're not putting it in. You have to have reliable launch at pace and scale. We have the platform, but it's not working at scale. You have to have a strong venture capital community. Fascinating. Chinese VC in space has now exceeded American. You have to be prepared to build industrial supply chains. I mean, the Americans out-subsidize Europe. I mean, SpaceX, I think, had 20 billion in subsidies. So I think we've got an opportunity, but we have to move much more quickly and build a proper framework. And I think the UK and Canada and Japan and Australia could be part of it. There are some tensions, and I wasn't clear as minister. I went a big commitment, but I wasn't really clear whether the EU space program was welcoming for the UK.
So if I get you right, you're also saying that the geopolitical situation in which we are living right now could be an opportunity for space, especially if you link it with space and defense. Mario, what is your opinion about this?
Yeah, I think it's. I think there is a good saying that never let a good crisis go to waste. So I think in that sense, even though war is extremely awful for everyone, it's maybe a good trigger to bring Europe out of its complacency. I think we've enjoyed 80 years of peace. This is no small feat. And I think that's a testament to what Europe can do well. But it also means that I would maybe compare Europe in the context of the space power question like a sleeping tiger, in the sense that all the capabilities are there, but they're not being used. So I think what this crisis situation can do right now is it can wake the European tiger again. And I mean, we do have the best minds, as already highlighted by multiple speakers, and Europe is essentially the best in space. I mean, the space assets that we have are very high tech, best of the best, essentially. So we do have the capabilities, but we do lack in some aspects. And I think one of those is indeed what George also highlighted, the lack of public and private funding. And it's something that I think can be fixed in the context of this crisis right now. I've been advocating both in ISK and in Estonia in general for the dual-use component, and I think that this is something that I'm really glad that in the 2 years that I've been pushing it, this has become from a taboo topic to the frontline topic. I mean, yesterday seeing in Brussels lots of generals on stage was a very welcome sight. People are starting to understand that it is somewhat back to the roots. And I mean, just to do the math that Ludwig kind of pointed to, Europe's GDP is 20 trillion. It's no small amount. And if we consider that long term, probably if we want to keep having peace, we probably have to move to about 5% GDP spending on defense, long term. 5% is 1 trillion. So any percent of that is 10 billion. So if we put even the current 2 to 3% spending to space, we're already talking about 20 to 30 billion extra coming from the military side. The US military is investing in space about 30 billion. So this would be equivalent. Of course, that would be added by also the private sector and the public use. But also one has to remember that this isn't only, I can understand that as an Eastern European region next to the border of Russia, it's obvious that I will be talking about defense spending. Estonia will be spending over 5% on defense next year. But I think also for the others, it can be used also as an opportunity, that it's dual use, and this coin flips both ways. It means that what you invest in defense will also strengthen your civilian and public use. And simple example, Estonia has promised 0.25% of GDP to help Ukraine. It's not cash sent out. We invest in local defense industry and ship the products. So it actually boosts local economy.
Mario, Estonia was chairing this year's European Interparliamentary Space Conference. What was the main outcome of this conference?
So basically the main outcome was kind of what you see yesterday and today, that people have fully started to understand that space and defense and space are essentially synonyms to an extent, that those two things go together, that we finally understand it, that we need to make sure that the dual-use component is there and we understand it both ways. That the fact that we use GPS, for example, for navigation in our day-to-day use also means that this is a topic that will be attacked and used in the military context. So we need to strengthen our civilian capacities as well, so that they are resilient in the hybrid use cases. So I think that was, one of the main outcomes of the conference was the understanding of the dual use being an inherent component. So it has to be addressed from both sides. We need to make our civilian services more resilient, and we have to understand that they can be used also for defense purposes. Mm-hmm.
And you know, the funny thing is when we started in Luxembourg with the Space Resource Initiative, I was always told by Parliament, do whatever you want to do, but no dual use. We don't want to have dual use. Nowadays, the Minister of Defense is calling me and asking me, don't you have any space companies which are doing into defense? We want to attract them. We need them on our territory in order to spend the money we have to spend on defense. So things changed completely since this dramatic situation in Ukraine and between Ukraine and Russia. So, as you said, if there's a good crisis, you should try to use it and to get somewhere with it. George, maybe a question to you. What do you think, how can governmental actions in sectorial policies better leverage space? What is your opinion about that?
Well, I think the geopolitics sets the scene, and it's totally changed, as you say now. And I think we have to agree, or make sure we have a shared understanding of what's going on. And the way I see it is China and America are engaged in another space race 2.0. It's very aggressive defense and commercial. Russia is now a disruptive player it's declared war on Europe, and we've still decided whether we want to reply or not. And, you know, the Ukrainians are amazing people, but I'm told by military folk that they can't survive forever. They can survive for a couple of years as long as we give them the weapons. And Europe, which was set up to be a force for peace, I think is struggling to decide whether we want to be a tiger or a cat, a kitten. And I think in the east of Europe, that's why it's exciting to be here in Vienna, this is an existential threat. So I hope and think that Europe can respond to this challenge, and I totally agree, Mario. Earth observation, dual use is the absolute key. My mission as UK Minister was to increase our commitment to ESA and to think about where the UK could fit in a European space economy. And it was clear to me that France, Germany, Italy will dominate the big at-scale manufacturing. That's fine. The UK has advanced special manufacturing. It seemed to me our role would be Earth observation, SATCOMs, encryption. It's part of our defense role in the joint operations. We need to think as a team. And crucially, if Canada and Norway and Switzerland and Japan, countries that don't want to be in the Beijing, Moscow, or Washington bloc, are welcome, then we could mobilize as a major third space bloc committed to peace, dual use, security, defense. But we've been talking about it for 2 or 3 years, and we need to speed up. So I think it is possible, but I fear in the UK, there's probably, I think, a feeling after Thierry Breton that we're not welcome in the EU defense supply chain. We're not welcome in IRIS, and therefore our future is with America. I think that's a false choice, but Thierry didn't help those of us who want to be part of the supply chain.
Mm-hmm. But George, you said we need to speed up. How do we have to speed up? But before you answer, I want to get your input as well. So we try this to be a little bit interactive. So if someone of you has an idea how to speed up, please tell me, and we're going to give you the mic in a second. But what is your idea? How can we speed up?
Okay, so launch is important, really important. And we've been talking about the problems in the Ariane launch program for at least 5 years. And the Americans are insufferable in all sorts of ways, but they do get on with stuff. They make it happen quickly. Mm-hmm. And we're being left behind on launch cadence. You know, I think we've had in 24, I think we had 3 or 4 launches from Ariane. The Chinese had like 150, and the Americans had 300. I mean, it's
twice a week or something.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know why the Ariane program is so slow and bureaucratic, but it needs to change. We're not going to keep up like that. But I think also the dual use point is really important. If we can show that Earth observation helps us do battlefield intel mapping to help Ukraine and to help Eastern Europe. When I was in cabinet, we were looking at Ukraine battlefield data from SpaceX. Well, America is an ally at the moment, kind of, but it's conditional now. We need our own European security Earth observation framework, but the world needs Earth observation for climate tracking, for agri-tech, for drought mapping. So this is huge commercial opportunity as well, not necessarily just in our defense supply chain, but in laying the foundation to be a global power. So I think it's obvious, but I'm not a member of the European Commission, and I do think that tension between an open Europe or a closed EU is quite important.
Mario?
Yeah, I think when we come back to the initial question, which was, I think, how do we fix this speed issue? I think one of the items is that I think we do need to learn a few aspects which did work. I know that not everything can be directly translated from one to the other, but I think what we do need is we need a very flexible and systematic effect to get the private sector to invest themselves as well. I mean, and for that, I think the biggest element is a guarantee that there will be orders. Because I think it's a chicken and egg problem. A lot of the space industry in Europe will develop once it has a platform to be in space. And that platform means that it has to be frequent, it has to be cheap. And the only way you can get it frequent and cheap is if you have a reliable, high-cadence launcher system which is cheap to operate, which sadly means it has to be reusable. It's the only way you make it cheap. And this means that this is the highest priority element that I think we need to fix very, very soon, because it's the key ingredient that sparks everything else. It doesn't matter if you can make hundreds of different satellites very flexibly and very fast if you can only launch them in 2 years. Mm-hmm. Or you have to go and launch them on a ally's launcher, not on your own. So I think this is an element that is the key milestone to do, and I think that has to be prioritized higher. And I think this is a component where we can use the dual use element. I mean, exactly, Earth observation. You can have intelligence satellites for Earth observation, and you have different resolution maps for the intelligence community and for the public community. It's using the same optics and camera, for example. So you can use the dual use fully in such contexts. But you can also understand that, I mean, launchers can launch all kinds of stuff. We don't usually want to talk about that, but they can launch all kinds of stuff. So.
What do you guys think about funding? You know, funding is always an issue, but you know, it cannot be only public funding. It cannot be funding from ESA or the national space agencies for all these different ideas of all these startups and companies which want to develop things. We see that the private funding model is developing. We have more and more investment funds investing into space companies, but we are still far behind what happens in the United States. So what do you think does the funding industry need in order to get more engaged into space? George.
Well, as a former venture capitalist who's then done 15 years in government, pulling my hair out at how slow we are, let me have a go at that. I was in Luxembourg, by the way, last week at the Space Venture Conference, and I know you were involved in that. Luxembourg is deploying a lot of its tax haven wealth into innovation. It's a very powerful force. So look, I think for the key for private-public partnerships, in my experience, is you need, firstly, really deep public investment in the core infrastructure that only the public sector can do. I think that's launch. And you know, this is true in all sorts of programs. In genomics in the UK, I set up Genomics England to sequence NHS patient genomes. The key infrastructure has to be public. But it has to be, secondly, open on easy terms for commercial players to access. And that is culturally as well as organizationally and politically. And crucially for little companies. I mean, the way Europe will move more quickly is augment the big industrials with a more agile, dynamic entrepreneurial community. And what they need is, it's not so much the volume of money, it's the certainty of money and the speed of money. And what kills SMEs is a government program that never says no or yes, and you spend years applying. What they need to know is quick validation. So I'd be creating a European Earth observation framework and just say, if you're supplying, you're accredited, an accredited supplier to global Earth observation for good. And just that kite mark is valuable. So I think we need to be more agile about how we encourage global space companies to think of the ESA and small E European network. So, but you need that deep funding of the deep infrastructure, the cadence of launch, open programs that are genuinely international. And you can't just have German majors only working with German SMEs or French. You have to be open about it if you want to get the pace.
And I think also one of the elements that I think we do have to cultivate centrally more is we have to remove the fear of failure. and that a failure immediately means that you're out. I think in a lot of, if you want to really speed up things, then rapid development, rapid deployment, rapid testing is something that is crucial. It can actually save you money, because actually the highest component in costs is personnel. And that means time. It's directly manpower time. So if you can do rapid development, but rapid development also means rapid testing, and rapid testing means testing to failure. As long as you don't fail constantly on commercial launches or the ones which are important, failure is okay. It means that you are developing. And I think that culture is something we can learn and implement. But I think it's something that still needs to be cultivated also from top down, that this is actually okay. And we also, I mean, essentially the long-term order book, it cannot be that you had one issue and then you're out of it. So it has to be a longer, longer parachute for the small developing SMEs. Then the public and private funding will come together. And I think in the private funding, it's something which is also a culture change in Europe, I think. In US, when they started with the whole IT capital in the early 2000s or late 90s, that generated a lot of capital that is also looking for output. And that is, there is a lot of money on the market from new money. And this is not something we have to the same scale here in Europe yet.
Yeah.
It's happening, but it's not to the same level.
And the best example of this is DARPA in America. The DARPA program was designed in the 60s to feed emerging American technologies into the space and defense program. And it's unbelievable. I mean, if they see a piece of technology that they know they need, you're fast-tracked in, procurement immediately, purchase order immediately, you're in. And it works. And we're still, in the UK as well as in Europe, I think we're still too bureaucratic, too slow, and not strategic enough.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Mario. And
thanks for having us.
But before ending this conversation, I would like to give the floor to you. Who would have a remark or a question towards this overall topic? Are we a space power, or let's say, how do we become a space power? What is missing? What is lacking? So feel free to ask your question or give just your remark. Is there some? Yeah, please.
Yeah, I would have a question regarding the capacity issue. When I say capacity, not just mass production of large quantities of, let's say, small satellites like we have in the States, but how can we actually tailor the capacity to A, what we really need in Europe to become autonomous, and B, to occupy niches, successfully occupy niches that puts us ahead of the competition from the US. If you look at the US, it's mainly, as I said, large quantities, relatively simple technologies, so it's a mass production approach, which reflects the industrial philosophy in the States. We have a totally different philosophy, and this could put us ahead in competition. So how can we actually push for a new development, a new policy for the industries to materialize on these opportunities that we have and to materialize on our special competencies?
Mario?
Yeah, I think it's, there are two things. I think the bulk topic, what you mentioned, this mass production cheap, is, I think, for the core services needed. In a sense that especially for the launchers, this is something that we need because those specialized services that come on top all require the core service. So the one horizontal element that is there has to be cheap, fast, rapid, and for that we need essentially to guarantee a long order book. Now, how that order book is filled then is then the question for those specialized services. And that we can try to curate with different kind of, I mean, there are always levers that you can pull on some elements, but basically what this is where you have the market failure situation where you need to step in from the public sector is indeed the core service with a long order book. So basically, if we say that if there is going to be a launcher that can launch for cheap, that kind of capabilities to these kinds of orbits, we'll book it for 10 years in advance, 100 launches per year. Give that as EU out, and then we can haggle on the spots. Who gets which spot? for which price. So, but basically the fact that the possible manufacturer already knows in advance that it already has 1,000 launches pre-booked, they'll get investments. Also from the private sector. It doesn't have to be fully funded. And I think that's the model which worked, because I think it was with SpaceX, it was the first time they actually broke orbit, they got an order for 25 launches for the next level rocket with 5 billion in advance. So that kind of a thing, where you get a pre-booked order for the base core service, then we can curate all the extra services and all the advanced things we are good in Europe. But I think those will not develop if they don't have a dedicated launcher already readily available.
Yeah, George.
I completely agree with that on procurement. I just make another point that I think there's a lot of SMEs, a lot of people in the space sector who would like to be part of the European supply chain, and they're not sure. And honestly, I'm not sure yet. After the bruising experience of Thierry Breton telling me that the UK wasn't going to be in the IRS supply chain, they're not sure whether the European dual-use defense surge is an open platform for spacefaring nations around the world who believe in security, prosperity, and open commerce, or a European EU program for an EU defense platform, only EU members. That has to be announced quickly, because if it's open, and you have a procurement framework and a commitment to volume that people believe, then I think it'll start to happen. There's a lot of people who are not sure at the moment whether the European space sector is an EU or an ESA international one, as Joseph has built it. And that's pretty key.
Thank you, George. I'm looking at Thomas. Do we have the time for one last question? Or?
Oh.
No.
There's one lady over there, because otherwise...
We need gender balance.
Yeah.
But who needs a 2-hour lunch anyway, right?
Can you please tell us who you are, and because we don't see with the...
Good morning. My name is Beate von Harten. I'm an artist. And I have the question to the lack of what is the understanding of space and time on the philosophical and spiritual matter. And I would like to give you some answers in the next conference about this.
I have a quick answer. I walked my son when he was 5 through Cambridge past a water clock outside King's College, and thinking you can never start too young, I said, "Hey Frank, which came first, time or space?" And he's just graduated from Oxford with a degree in theology. And you make an important point, right? Space is exciting because it goes to the origins of life, to the origins of our humanity, to our existence. That is a very inspiring call to arms for a global as well as a European public who wonder if there's any value in the public realm, any philosophy underpinning it. I think you can have both.
Yes, and I just want to say that space came first, and time is dependent on space because it is movement and changing in space. Thank you very much.
I'll tell my son that. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So I think I give the floor to you if you are quick and sharp, yeah? Because we are running out of time, so please, go ahead.
Hartmut Bühl, I'm a publisher from Paris. Nasty question. Do we need an Elon Musk?
Do we need a European Elon Musk, you mean? I mean, cut away some of the character aspects and sure. But I think if you cut away those character aspects, you also don't get an Elon Musk. So I think it's a cost-benefit analysis. So if you do want somebody who revolutions the whole industry and breaks the industry and rebuilds it, you also have to understand that you will get a very eccentric person with an ego. So it's a deep philosophical question, I think.
I'm going to be controversial. Yes. He's flawed, like all of us, but genius comes with a lot of flaws. And Europe, we have everything else, but we don't have these characters. We don't have these driven, dynamic, private sector leaders who we can work with. So I don't believe and agree with much that Musk says, but we need people like him to drive the European space program.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank you, George, Mario. It was a pleasure having you today. George, thank you. And I want to thank you for listening to us. We tried to stick with the 25 minutes. I thank you, and I thank Ludwig, Tomasz, and all the team of ESPI for organizing this and for succeeding so well to get all of us together in order to exchange and try to forge new ideas for the future. So thank you so much and enjoy your day. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Etienne. We'll continue with the two